Welcome, everybody. We are back for Kagurabachi Chapter 95, titled Flood. This chapter was very enjoyable. Obviously, addressing the most obvious elephant in the room, the chapter itself from a art perspective was unfinished, and I in no way, shape, or form am blaming Hokuzono. I know, or at least I'm aware of, the extreme working conditions that mangakas have to deal with to be able to output their weekly chapters. And if anything, it just makes me want for him to get a break. Obviously, it sucks when we don't get new chapters, but I would much prefer taking as long of a break as he needs in order to maintain his health, because I want him to be able to continue this story for a long time and be able to release chapters in the way that he would like. Obviously, finished, and mainly, just this chapter, I could see the vision that he had for it. And, it just makes me not like disappointed. I'm just a little sad because I would love to see this chapter fully realized in alignment with Hokuzono's vision, especially because the chapter focuses on some really awesome stuff, including Azumi, who is one of my favorite characters in the series. So I would have loved to get to see him truly shine the way that he was meant to in this chapter. But regardless, we are here. It is still a great chapter that gives us lore, action, and really crazy setup for moving forward, which I feel like I keep saying after each chapter of this Kamunabi invasion arc. But before we actually dive directly into the chapter, there is an incredible color page that Hokuzono gave us this week. We get to see 3 of the enchanted blades, and in the reflections of the blades themselves, we get to see the wielders of those blades. So we obviously in the top have Tobi Mune with Samura in the reflection. We have N10 with Chihiro, and then we also have the Kumayuri with Hirohiko. So incredible color page. So just felt like I had to call that out. But we're going to continue on right into the chapter. And this is where we open up and get some more world building and lore for the Kagurabachi universe, which I am an absolute sucker for. So I'm extremely happy and excited that we are getting more world building in Kagurabachi. So it starts off being explained that the powerful sorcery dynasties, like the Sazanami clan, which was the clan that ruled the Rakuzaichi, the auction, there are powerful dynasties of these sorcerer clans around Japan that have been around since antiquity. And until recently, their activities were basically kept on the down low. They were operating basically only in the underworld. It was practiced in the shadows, and only after or during the Seitei War 18 years ago was the public became aware of sorcerers and that their existence. And then from there, those clans, their activities intensified, because no longer did they kind of have to like move in the shadows and in silence and kind of skulk about. Now they could be much more brazen and out in the open due to the Seitei War, because obviously there's large scale, insane sorcery combat going on that now the general public is aware of. So this is, and basically the person explaining this stuff is Kaisen, or Kasen. I'm going to go with Kasen, the leader of the Kamunabi. Kasen is basically describing that the Kamunabi was brought into order in this country. Basically, it's what brought the country itself into order during and post Seitei War, because it's an agency that was established by the government full of sorcerers, and it's public knowledge. And he acknowledges the fact that they are strong, but they are much more of a cobbled together group of people with no real legacy, unlike the families, these dynasties that are all about blood, lineage, and a legacy. We saw for specifically the Sazanami clan and the legacy of the Rakuzaichi, just how powerful having a legacy and a mission can drive people, whether it be twisted and wrong. It doesn't matter. It still makes these clans extremely powerful and dangerous. Like we saw Kyora, Hakuri's father, we saw his determination to continue the auction, maintain control over the Rakuzaichi, and continue on the legacy of the Sazanami clan. And that determination allowed him to partially, even though it was only a small bit, he was able to wield the power of the Magatsumi, the Shinuchi. And we know now from Kyora's own words and what we see later on in this chapter, just how crazy being able to fight off the influence of the Swordmaster is when you are wielding some of the Magatsumi. And Kyora was able to do it for an extended period of time while also maintaining his sorcery of the storehouse. So when he's talking about Kasen here, talking about legacy and powerful traditions, that is the reason that those clans do not feel a need to yield to the Kamunabi. And apparently even in today, in the current time right now, the Kamunabi and these clans are just in a deadlock with each other. And they're only barely able, the Kamunabi is only barely able to maintain order with, like, it's a very minimal order. It's not something that they have a full grip on. It was, I guess, to me, it seemed from the earlier sections of the manga, the Kamunabi seemed much more ironclad, much more unchallenged, completely in control. But according to Kasen here, they are not. They're barely holding on and barely maintaining this public order. And he points to the fact that the Rakuzaichi was allowed to exist is one example of that situation and how limited their reach is, because the auction had absolutely atrocious behavior going on, like the selling of people as merchandise, and that is absolutely illegal even within the Kagurabachi universe. And it was still able to be continuously held every single year, purely because they did not have the absolute power to shut it down. So he believes himself that if they had the ability to bring all of those powerful clans under the umbrella of the Kamunabi, they could establish true law and order. But that those clans and those powerful lineages will never bend to the Kamunabi's will if they are only issuing lukewarm threats. So he believes that that's why they need an all-powerful weapon to subdue them. And in other words, he is referring to the enchanted blades. So not just having them sealed away, not having them just sit on the shelf, but actually being used. And this is where Ichiki chimes in, and he's like, hey, we've been over this. We've talked about this. We beat this horse to death right after the war. And he points out the fact that the Shinichi, the Magatsumi, is the blade that caused the malediction, which is the greatest atrocity of all time. And Kassen comes back with a rebuttal of the Shinichi isn't the one that committed the crime. It was the sword master that was the one that overstepped and violated, and that they should execute the sword master and then establish a new bearer of the eternal contracts and harness its power. And Ichiki comes right back at him in the fact that yes, it was the sword master's crime, but the enchanted blade executed it. So the blade is also to blame. And what he means here, with a little further explanation, is just that the fact that, yes, this is a weapon and it cannot just be, without a wielder, it can't do anything. But the fact that it can execute such a horrendous outcome, it's not, the blade itself is also to blame, because it's like a nuke, like a nuclear warhead. Yeah, if it's just sitting there, it's technically not doing, it can't do anything. It's not just gonna, fly, all of a sudden just go fly across the world and blow up somewhere. But if someone uses one, yes, the person who issued the order to use it is guilty, but the nuclear warhead itself is the one that executed it. So it's also to blame. If that never existed, that couldn't happen. So Ichiki even brings up the fact that the true depths of the sword's powers, the enchanted blade's powers, were even unfathomable to Rokuhira himself. So the creator of these weapons did not truly even grasp just the depth of power that these blades had, which is a crazy thing. It's just one of those situations where you create something and it actually exceeds your expectations, and it begins operating on a level in which you weren't even anticipating it. So Ichiki believes that they can't rule out the possibility of another malediction. So as long as that risk, that astronomically large risk, is still in play, that those using those powers is not an option. And he continues that that's why they contain the blades in the first place and established an education system to cultivate their successors around those. So the people they're bringing up within the Kamunabi as their successors, that's why they're educating them on the importance of containing the enchanted blades. And that the fact that they have a long road ahead of them, but even if they don't live to see it, human beings must build a peaceful world. And Kassen here says that, yes, the Kamunabi came to that consensus 18 years ago. But he continues on saying that they cannot rule with that approach, and that the world needs the enchanted blades. And I think it's very interesting that he uses the word rule here. So you can see his true intentions by using the word rule. It's not lead, it's not protect, it's not cultivate, it's rule. It's iron fist, having ultimate power to make everyone operate within your own bounds that you establish. He wants full control. It's basically tyranny. that he is seeking, because he believes that's the only way to achieve true peace, which is a very naive and utopian sort of thought process, and operates under the assumption that everyone in the Kamunabi is going to always act in the best interests of the public, which that is, frankly, in any large complex organization, that's not going to happen. There is going to be corruption. There is going to be personal agendas at play. And when you're dealing with millions of lives of an entire country, that's not something that you can just, put up to chance. So he continues on the fact that few people agreed with him back then, but he harbored this conviction in secret, and he maintained his position as the leader of the Kamunabi, all building up for this day. And he says that they can finally begin to establish order with the enchanted blades. And Ichiki still, at this point, is still staying like calm and collected. He's not really, freaking out or getting emotional. He's just coming back to Kassen with logical, rational arguments, and basically points out the fact that you're conspiring with thugs while professing lofty ideas. So you have you have these such incredible ideas of this peaceful utopia brought about by the rule of the Kamunabi for the good of the public, but then you are colluding and conspiring with a group of villains, basically, literally people who are not afraid to manipulate and kill innocent people just so that they can get to their goals and what they want to achieve. And that's the people that you're teaming up with. And Kassen here just says that he's prepared to make many sacrifices for a brighter future. And that includes his own pride. And it includes the lives of the sword bearers who will ultimately pass away once they execute the sword master. Because we know the eternal contracts for all of the blades are connected to the contract with the Magatsumi, with the Shinichi and the sword master. And if the sword master passes away, all I apologize, all of the other sword bearers will also pass away. And he says that even includes Rokuhira's life. So he's speaking on Chihiro in this moment. And he also says, while he's preparing his sorcery, that it includes you who resist me today. And before we continue on here, I do want to just say that I was wrong last chapter, where I thought that Kassen, him being the traitor, I thought that it was potentially a red herring, and that it may be, I cannot remember her name for some reason, but the other assistant of Kassen, the female sorceress. I thought it was kind of maybe going to be like a red herring situation where, we're seeing Kassen and he, is acting kind of shady, but then it actually like cuts over to her and it was her all along. But no, it really was him. And he is going to activate his sorcery of some sort. And in the very next panel, before he can even do anything, Azumi, the goat, just comes in with a one punch directly to his face and just sends him flying across the room, busting into the wall. And the dude's he's done for with one punch. And I love this. It just, honestly, it subverted my expectations here. Because I know that this obviously makes Kassen, the leader of the Kamunabi, look pretty bad. But I do think, obviously, he probably is a very capable sorcerer. I'm assuming that he, similar to even Ichiki later on in this chapter, I don't think he truly understood the level at which Azumi seems to have achieved when it comes to specifically combat strength. So I don't think he was ready to catch these hands. And I don't know how many people would be ready to catch hands with Azumi. But he just gets stopped in his tracks right there. Really was not expecting that. I thought at least he would like do something and maybe like, disappear. But no, he got rocked. So uh Azumi is the man. And he just, after laying out the leader of the Kamunabi, he just is like, Mr. Ichiki, you interrogate him. He should know every last Hishaku member, which is a great point. He absolutely should, because he should be privy to basically all of their information. And Ichiki just says yes. And then he's like, where are you going? Because Azumi just turns around and he starts walking out. And we get just such a cold line, because he's just no explanation besides to kill their leader. He wants all the smoke. Now that he understands what happened from top down and how this invasion is basically occurring, he seems to have even more purpose and conviction going forward. But he's going into the elevator, and we proceed to cut away from that group, and we come back to Yura, Uraha, and Natsuki. And same place we found them last time. Uraha and Natsuki are just being choked out basically by Yura. And Yura is saying that with the power of the Magatsumi, he is going to overthrow the Kamunabi. And before he can actually do anything, we see him like wince in pain. And that split second gives Uraha and Natsuki the opportunity to free themselves and get a little bit of distance. And this is where we actually get a quick glimpse of the Swordmaster. He appears to be standing up. So not sure if he's feeling the connection to using some of the power of the Magatsumi. So I'm curious how the timeline actually matches up from when we saw him like fully stand up, and like if it matches up to actually this part of the invasion. And Yura thinks to himself, like, what, like, to think that Kyora managed this even with severe injuries from head to toe. And this is what I was talking about earlier about just Kyora's insane conviction and around his mission and his purpose and his legacy as part of the Sazanami clan, and just how it allowed him to maintain himself even though he had fatal wounds at that point. I just recently went back and reread that arc. I'm actually in a full reread of Kagurabachi right now. And yet Kyora had fatal wounds, and he was about to actually die shortly before beginning to utilize the Magatsumi's powers. And then he was still, even in that condition, it was basically keeping him alive, but he was also able to remain himself all the way until the very end when he passed on. So seeing Yura, as capable as he is, struggling, it just goes to show that it truly is an insane thing to be able to resist. Then we get to see Hokuto, who basically seems like he was underneath a bookshelf, and he just says it's time to get to work. This does concern me because it sounds less like the enjoyment that we've been hearing and seeing from him, and more flipping the switch to it's time to do my job, which is a lot scarier because we know from Natsuki and Uraha in their observations of Hokuto, he has still yet to show his true capabilities. So if he's going to work, that means we may be seeing him lock in here soon, which is very scary. And that is when we have Yura. We get an amazing panel. It's one of the finished ones, and it's just a panel of his hand, but he has the centipede spirit energy circling around it, and we get to see some of the flowers. But I just love the paneling because it's like his arm is coming out of the top of the panel, and he activates centipede, which then sends out the slicing shockwave in omnidirectionally all over the place. And luckily, just in the nick of time, Uraha noticed this attack coming, and he actually grabs Natsuki's hair from the back and pulls him down. So they do manage to dodge it. And we get a funny moment of Natsuki saying, like, hey, don't pull my hair. But Uraha's like, hey, I suddenly realized how to evade it. And he's thinking back on his experience on the train after they left the hot springs and he met up with Chihiro and Hakari, and they were under attack by Hirohiko. Chihiro he was going to use a kuro within the train, but to get Hakari to understand what he was about to do, he says centipede, and that allows Hakari to pull Uraha's hair so that he dodges the slash. And it's the same exact situation here. But Natsuki's like, I could have dodged it myself. Just let me go. Like, they're still bickering like cats and dogs here. But then we get to see Yura is kind of like huffing and puffing. He's breathing heavily, but he says, the sword master, I'm coming to kill you, and the Shinichi will be mine completely. So this, at least I was always curious, and I felt like Yura and the Hishaku, even though he had stated all the way back at the Rakuzaichi that their plan, all of this stuff had been so that Yura could wield the Shinichi, which would mean the sword master would have to pass away before he could wield it fully. It just seemed like they were helping to free the sword master. But according to his own words, they are there to kill him and get rid of him so that he can wield it himself. But I'm still kind of going back and forth with, will the sword master be the ultimate villain, or is it Yura? Because I'm still leaning towards the sword master. He is the one that has the most history. We know it. He was Rokuhira's like most trusted ally, and that's, I think, why he was entrusted with the Shinichi. And he was clearly a master swordsman. And there's just so much that we could learn from him specifically that I just do not think he is going to die. And I think he's still going to be in the series. And I think he is the ultimate final villain. But I'm just curious of how Yura actually fits into this equation, because the Hishaku have been the direct antagonists for Chihiro because they are the ones that murdered his father and stole the enchanted blades in the first place. So I'm just curious. I would love to know what any of you think down below when it comes to Yura, when it comes to the sword master. Who do you think is going to end up wielding the Shinichi? Who do you think is going to be the end-all villain? And just any of your general thoughts on that dynamic, because I think it's very interesting how Hokuzono is setting it up. But even Yura is thinking this, but then this is where we see the double doors just get kicked open, broken open. And unfortunately, this is where some of these panels are unfinished because it is our boy Azumi showing up, just aura farming, coming in the door, just looking amazing, immaculate. And he's looking down on Yura, and he thinks to himself that he's like, so their intention is to rule, and to rule with the Shinuchi. So he says that he can imagine the endless horrors that could lie beyond if that were to come true. And we get to see a panel of Kassen, even though he's knocked up against the wall, blood all over, looking terrible. And he just says that it's futile. It's the power of the Shinuchi. Basically, it sounds like he's saying resistance is futile. It doesn't matter because the power of the Shinuchi is so great that there's nothing we can do about it. But Ichiki is thinking to himself that when he said, and he's referring to Azumi, that when Azumi said that he was merely younger than those three, that Azumi was actually being humble. And Ichiki just says that his sorcery is truly outstanding. And he thinks on Kudo and what Kudo had said, because he's like, I know when you said Azumi's on another level, you meant on every level, not just being younger and being a bit stronger when it comes specifically to combat. He's saying on every level. And this is just awesome because Ichiki even thinks to himself that he'll stop them. And then the final panel, the page of the chapter, we get Azumi preparing. He's got that little bit of like, I don't know if it's like smoke or energy. I'm not sure what it is, but during my reread all the way back when we see him for the first time, we get to see a little bit of that showing up on his hands. And I don't know exactly what it is because we know that Azumi's sorcery is assault and battery, which literally just seems like hands. I got hands for anybody, which is amazing. I always love characters that just fight with their hands, no weapons, and especially in a series like Kagurabachi where the enchanted blades are so powerful and there's such a focus on swords, which is great, but seeing someone in the series that is just like, I use my bare hands and just my physical prowess, I just love it. I always love those types of people. It's like Garp in One Piece, if you've ever read or watched that. I'm a sucker for these type of people, and that's why Azumi is one of my favorites. But he says, don't you worry, Rokuhira, you can rest in peace. So he's speaking to his deceased friend on the fact that he is here and he is going to handle the situation that is happening with his weapons that he created, and get revenge on the people who ended his life, because these are the Hishaku. Azumi has a personal grudge, obviously, against them, as well as a higher purpose as part of the Kamunabi and the greater good. So I don't know how the matchups are going to proceed from this point, but I am incredibly excited. I think if we're gonna get Azumi versus Yura utilizing some of the Shinuchi's powers, it's gonna be an incredible battle. I hope that Hokazono gets the time that he needs, because if he does, I know he will absolutely blow it out of the water, because he is just an incredible mangaka when it comes to action and his paneling. However, I will say the fact that Ichiki in anime or manga, whenever somebody just outright states that someone's going to win or someone's going to stop them or talks about how strong someone is right before a fight, I just get a bit anxious and get antsy because it feels to me like they always do it. They build an expectation and then something tragic happens where all of a sudden the person that is being so hyped up actually gets upstaged by something else. And I'm just a little worried. I have faith in my boy Azumi, but I am a little bit I would lie. I'd be lying if I didn't say I was worried. So I'd love to hear what you guys have to say. What do you think the matchups are going to be going forward from this situation, from Azumi joining the fray here? I guess technically now that Kassen has been taken out, that should allow Hakari to store the Shinichi in his warehouse. So that would be a good thing, but I still have a feeling that that's not actually going to happen. So I don't think the chaos is over. I don't think the surprises are over for this invasion. So I'm going to stay buckled. I'm going to stay ready and prepared. And I would recommend that you all do the same. But regardless, this is the end of the chapter. Like I said, please let me know down below what you guys thought of it. And if you've made it this far and you enjoyed the video, please feel free to subscribe. I would greatly appreciate it. But I hope you guys are all having a great day or night wherever you are, and I will catch you in the next chapter. Peace.